it's me, James, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of the set of playing cards known as La Baraja Española. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this very special video. I am honoring the request of a viewer. Her name is Lisa. So Lisa, if you're watching, this is for you. Lisa sent me a note a couple of days ago through a comment thread on another YouTube video on playing cards that I recently posted. And she asked me about a set of playing cards known as La Baraja Española. If you're not familiar, that is a set of Spanish playing cards, but they're also known as Spanish tarot cards. So Lisa asked me if I would be willing, if I had the set of cards, of course, and of course I did, if I would be willing to do a walkthrough of the cards and then maybe offer a couple of ways that I work with the deck in terms of readings. So, a little bit about how I came in contact with La Baraja Española. First and foremost, people who know me know that I love playing cards, but I love cards of all kinds. And so a couple brought a couple of sets back from their trip to Spain. They went to Spain and they thought of me while they were traveling, and so they picked up a couple of sets, like I said, of La Baraja Española and brought them back to me. I was so fascinated that I wanted to kind of explore them further. So one of the things that I learned is that they come in different numbered packs, meaning like there's a different number of cards in a particular set. So I wanted to optimize my experience with La Baraja Española, and so I was on the hunt for a deck of cards that had as close to 52 as possible. And so the set I'm going to be walking through today is a set I found on Fournier. So I'm going to hold the box up, and Fournier is a publisher of playing cards and tarot cards, but they are more of Spanish influence or Spanish nature. Right, so here's the box. Show you the box. Show you the back. That's the back of the box. And like I said, this one has 50 cards in it. And so I went with that because I think in some cases there are 32, and then there are some that are 40. And if I'm misspeaking, those of you who are more knowledgeable can drop a comment in the comment section below correcting me. But I wanted to go with a set of 50. So like I said, so that is actually how I came in contact with the card. So now let me say a couple of things at the beginning. I am not fluent in Spanish, so I don't know much in terms of if there is a cultural tradition in terms of the way the cards are read. So I choose to read them as I would any set of either playing cards, generally speaking, and you all know, if you are here, then you know that I have a great deal of videos explaining how I work with the cards in terms of my own set of meanings. And when I say my own, it's not like I created them. I work with an established set of meanings that I got from two sources that I always give credit to. One is Dr. Leo Louis Martello, and the other is Regina Russell. And so Dr. Martello had a book out back in the day called It's Written in the Cards, and so that became one of the foundational texts for my Cartomancy practice. And then I discovered through Regina Russell her book, The Card Reader's Handbook, and I've done a walkthrough of that particular book. So if you're interested in that, I will leave a link to that video in the description box below. But those two books have become the foundational texts, if you will, for my practice. So since I didn't have any knowledge of any cultural tradition that is associated with reading the cards, I just went with what I knew, right? And so I will offer, as I'm doing a walkthrough of the cards, a reference that I found, because here's the other thing. Since I'm not fluent in Spanish, meaning I can't read it or speak it, a lot of the texts that I did find while I was doing research or exploring reference material are written in Spanish, right? So I did find one in English, and I will show you that as I'm going through the cards. Okay, so now that I've set things up, let's just go ahead and start off with a walkthrough of the cards. And I am back, so now we're going to go ahead and do the walkthrough. So now as I'm walking through the cards, I want to say first and foremost that they are not in order because I've been working with them in preparation for this video. So, like I said, the set I have is from Fournier, and this is the back of the cards. Just want to show you the pattern. Now, I believe that when I ordered these cards, they could come in either red or blue. I just chose red, but that's the back of the cards. So now I'm just going to go ahead and just show you the front of the cards. And I will make comments as I'm walking through the cards. So now the first thing you will notice, or I should point out, is that they're in 4 suits. So here I'm holding up the King of Clubs. Right, so clubs, the suits are clubs, cups, swords, and coins. Right? So if you're not fluent in Spanish, just based on that, it likens itself to like the minor arcana from more historical tarot decks, right? And I'm thinking about like Marseille in particular. So that is why I have chosen to kind of maybe adopt a more Marseille reading style or approach to the cards. But this is the King of Clubs. Here we have the 5 of Coins. Now this is an important thing to note. The system itself, when you're walking through each suit has 12 cards. And they have chosen to not have the 10s as numbered cards, whereas in like maybe a more bicycle type deck, you'll have the ace through the 10s, right? We call those pip cards or spot cards. Here, in La Baraja Española, we have the 10s as the jacks or the sotas. And the other thing to note about the jacks is that they are the substitute for the queens, right? So I already showed a king. So they have the jacks, the knights, and the kings. There are no queens. So if you're going to be working with this set of cards, you have to keep in mind that the jacks or the sotas are going to represent either women or children. So that is the Jack of Swords, 7 of Clubs. And I went with this one because I really like the art style in this deck. So here we have the 4 of Swords. And here on this one, they will have a little website address in the middle. It makes me think of like, if you're into historical tarot decks, it makes me think of like the 2 of coins in that system where it has the ribbon with the publication date, you know, on it, or the 2 of cups where it has the little shield at the bottom, and sometimes some writing is in that, but it made me think of that. The 9 of Swords. So now the 9 kind of like is like the 10 in like the bicycle type decks, right? It represents the completion of that suit before you move into the court cards. 6 of Swords. Here we have the Jack of Cups. No, I'm sorry. This is the Knight of Cups. The Knights are on horses. Yeah, so this is the Knight of Cups. Excuse me. 8 of Swords. 3 of Clubs. I like that one. The Knight of Clubs. And the other thing that to point out is that if you look at the border, they are in degrees of dashes or separation, like there's space in between them, except for the suit of coins, which is completely closed. That is another way for you to be able to identify the suit, right? So here is the King of Coins. Notice that the border is entirely closed. Whereas here we have the 7 of Swords. Notice that it's a little open in areas. Ace of Cups. I really like that. Now there are 2 jokers in the pack of 50, because if you go with the idea that there are 12 cards for each suit, 12 times 4 is 48, and then they have 2 jokers. I only work with the 1 because they were identical, so I only felt the need to have 1 in the pack, so I removed the second one and I just worked with this one. But I do like the joker. The 8 of coins. Here we have the 4 of cups, and note that there is some writing in the center. Here is the Jack of coins, and the other thing that I do like about this, unlike bicycle decks where there is a split image of the court cards, they are full figured here. I really like that. Here we have the 4 of coins, and again, notice there's some writing in there. That's like almost like a signature card. The Ace of clubs. 2 of cups. It's the Ace of swords. This is the Jack of cups. 3 of cups. 9 of coins. 6 of cups. 2 of coins. Here we have the King of swords. 3 of swords. So this would be a great deck to maybe consider working with using the intuitive method that I offered in a previous video. You could take a look at the patterns on all the cards, like all the same number cards. For instance, you could take all the 6s out of the pack and put them together and see, is there something similar in terms of the way that the pattern is arranged for all the 6 cards? And what do you think about that? What comes to mind with that? Like for instance, yeah. So here I see, just to give you an example, here's the 6 of clubs. The first thing that I notice is that there's 2 rows of 3, right? And they're alternating in terms of the way the bat is pointing in terms of the handle, right? And the color. So, you know, there may be something you could do with that. Whereas the 6 of coins, a previous card, was either 3 rows of 2 or 2 columns of 3, depending on perspective, right? And what do you make of that? Here we have the King of Cups. 4 of clubs. The Knight of coins. 8 of clubs. The 2 of swords. Notice here that, you know, each sword is pointing in a different direction. One is pointing up, one is pointing down. You know, what could you intuitively come up with in terms of meaning for that? Right, I'm suggesting, like, even though I'm not fluent in Spanish and I'm not aware of cultural traditions when it comes to the cards, I still could make some meaning out of that just based on arrangement of pattern, or the colors, or with the court cards, you know, directional cues. You know, that's just knowledge that I'm bringing that I already have, bringing to the cards. Here we have the 5 of clubs. And then you could say, or come up with some ideas to what it means to have that middle club pointing one way versus the other. 7 of coins. And if you're familiar with bicycle cards, you'll know that the Ace of Spades is always the the card that gets the most attention in terms of prominence, right? In terms of the size of the pip on the card and maybe some ornate decoration around it. I think in La Baraja Española, it's usually the ace of coins. Notice all the detail and attention given to this card. Seven of Cups. Three of Coins. The Five of Swords. Five of Cups. Two of Clubs. Notice the same arrangement as in the Two of Swords, right? One club is pointing up, and the other one is pointing down. Here we have the Jack of Swords. I keep saying Jack of Swords, the Knight of Swords, right? Because there's a horse there. And then the last card I have in my hand is the Nine of Cups. So those are 49 of the 50 cards that come in this particular pack. Now remember, it's because I said there are two jokers, but I only work with the one. So now before I get to the table and show you a couple of ways that I work with the cards, I figured I would show you the one reference that I found in English on the playing cards. So now I have my phone in my hand because I have this on my Kindle. So hopefully, because of the screen, you'll be able to see it. I'm going to hold it as close as I can. There we go. It's called The Secrets of the Spanish Playing Cards, and it is by Cara Jansen. This is the cover. So now let me see if I can swipe it. Yeah. So this was written in 2015, or at least that's when the copyright was. So I'm going to just show you the table of contents. I'll hold it up. So these are the table of contents. If you want to pause that, you can see that. Okay, so I'm just going to read off some of the things. It says here, what is La Baraja Española? How to use the Spanish playing cards, the suits, keywords. Then it goes through the four suits: coins, cups, swords, clubs, the joker even. Some spreads, some card combinations, and a Spanish pronunciation guide for people like me. Right? So, but yeah, so that is the book. So again, that is the Secrets of the Spanish Playing Cards by Cara Jansen. So you might want to check this out. It was a Kindle book, so it was reasonably priced. I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but it was reasonable. Okay, and oh, I guess I should tell you maybe how many pages it has. So it has 137 pages. Yeah. Okay. So again, so that is the book. So now that I've gone through the deck and the one reference guide I have to La Baraja Española, I will now turn to the table and show you a couple of ways that I work with the cards. So let's do that now. And here I am at the table with a line of 3 cards from La Baraja Española, which are Spanish playing cards, or sometimes known as Spanish tarot cards, excuse me. And so this is honoring Lisa's request to see some ways that I read with the cards. So I literally did this line of 3 cards right before I got on camera. I did it for my day, so I just basically asked the cards to tell me about my day. It's a nice, easy way for me to learn a new system or work with a new deck. I always start off just by asking what does my day look like? So I do this kind of reading in the morning, and then I come back and review it at the end of the day. Okay, so here we have the Ace of Cups. That's the first card. 7 of Swords, and then the King of Coins, right? So these were the 3 cards. And if you notice, like I was alluding to when I was doing the walkthrough, if you notice the borders, each suit has a different frame around the central image, right? So you notice all the cups cards will be framed like this, then the swords are like that, and then the coins are all enclosed. Okay, again, and I believe that is just so you can visually quickly, like if you're playing a game with cards, right? Because just like we do here in the States, we play games with playing cards. I'm sure that's done throughout the world using the different sets of cards that exist, right? So it would be no different here. And I think just from a visual standpoint, like if you have a number of cards in your hand, so to speak, then you could quickly see which ones are which just based on the border. Okay, so the way I interpret the cards, like I said, because I am not fluent in Spanish and I am not aware of any cultural traditional meanings of the cards, so I just went with what I already knew to be true for me when I work with playing cards and just worked with that body of knowledge, right? Okay, so for me, the Ace of Cups can suggest something having to do with home, because it can represent home and family, or something having to do with a particular family member, right? It could also be the beginning or start of something of an emotional or spiritual nature. And I love how ornate this cup is. It makes me think of the Ace of Cups in more historical tarot decks, like the Marseille. I tend to think of like churches with this particular kind of cup, right? Because one of the meanings that I have for the Ace of Cups in the Marseille deck is it can represent the holy city, excuse me, because I'm here in Charleston, and I tend to think of churches with that. It almost looks like a church, either on top of the cup or emerging from the cup if you look at the image. So I kind of go with that. So it makes me think of those 3 things, right? So it could just be something emerging or something beginning, right? Aces represent the beginning or the start of something either on an emotional level or an intuitive level or spiritual level, right? So then we have the Seven of Swords. So now the first thing I noticed with the Seven of Swords in terms of the pattern, I noticed that the middle card, or the middle sword, excuse me, on the card was pointing to the Ace of Cups. So it made me feel like there's something being referenced or pointed out regarding the Ace of Cups, right? But my chief meaning for the Seven of Swords is that it can represent things like delays, setbacks, difficulties, problems, just because of the suit of swords, right? I liken it to the suit of spades in like bicycle type playing cards, right? So with that, because the suit of spades for me always represents problems, difficulties, challenges, things like that. So it could just be that there's going to be some delay or setback involving maybe something within the house, or something involving a church that I'm familiar with. I won't know till the end of the day now, mind you, but for me, this card represents a delay, setback, or something, some sort of stagnation. Now, it can also be that the cards are alluding to something having to do with one's faith, because for me, the Seven of Swords can represent a need for faith. Usually can represent a crisis of faith, right? So there may be something on the spiritual level taking place here with that. But I just love the middle sword pointing to the Ace of Cups. So that's how I looked at that. Usually can represent also too, before I move on, that there's something about improving a situation that may be problematic or challenging or difficult, because the 7 for me is not necessarily just a spiritual number, but it's also a number for improvement when I'm working with playing cards. So with it being attached to the swords, could represent there may be difficulty with improving something. And again, that could be something having to do with home or a family situation, or something involving spirituality, right? So there is that. Now the last card is the King of Coins. Now the first thing that I noticed when I laid the card down is that he's looking off into the right, and there's no card there. So what I did was I decided after I was going to work with these 3 cards, I was going to draw an additional card, which is why there's a space there, because I want to show you the card that I pulled, right? So the first thing is, could be sometimes the King of Coins can be, or kings or queens, for me anyway, can be like a stand-in for actual people. So sometimes the king can be a stand-in for me, or a significator for me. So this, I thought, could be me, and then if I go with that, maybe as a possibility, since he's not looking this way, it could be like this is something that he's ignoring, or this is something in the past, or something that he's not giving any attention to, again, because I go with line of sight, right? Something that he's not giving any attention to, right? And that would make sense. Let's just go with the hypothetical. So the situation might not improve, or there's going to be difficulty or improving it because either myself, if I put myself in the place of the King of Coins, or another man is not going to give it any attention, right? Situation can improve if you're not going to either face it or look into it or give it some sort of attention, right? Again, because his gaze is looking elsewhere. Right, so that's one possibility. Now, King of Coins could also be, if it's not me in particular, then this could be somebody who is an entrepreneur, somebody who is perhaps a wealthy man, somebody who has mastered. I tend to think of kings as mastery, either self-mastery or mastery of their suit or domain, right? Somebody who has mastered either financial resources, material resources. And then if we go with the idea that the frame is solid, then maybe he has created a sense of stability and security, right? So there's that. Now it could also be that I would come in contact with this particular type of person as my day goes on, right? So that is some ways of looking at it. So now I decided I wanted to draw another card because I didn't like the idea of him staring off and there was nothing to look at. So I drew the 9 of clubs. That was the card I drew. And the same thing here. Well, now what I noticed is with him in the middle, the middle sword on the 7 of swords is pointing towards the ace of cups, right? But the handle of the middle club on the 9 of clubs, it's almost like he could reach out and grab the club. Right? That's the first thing that came to me, right? But the other thing, if I just go with the pattern, is here we have the 4 clubs on the top and the bottom of the card, and they are alternating in orientation and color, right? And then we have this middle club that is different from all the other ones, right? So it could just be about something being different, something being something standing out, right? Because of its difference. It could be maybe a different way of, for lack of a better word, attacking a situation, right? Because the sword and the club could be used to defend oneself or attack another person, right? So it could just be a matter of maybe not attacking whatever the difficulty or the problem is this way, but more this way, right? So now my general meaning for the 9 of clubs, it usually represents something that is a long time coming. So that could be like achieving something over a period of time, or in terms of progress, noticing that you've come a long way, that kind of thing. But it could also be like in the future, if there's some sort of work or endeavor, right? Because the suit of clubs for me can represent things that we are working on. So it could actually be literal work or business, right? Or something that we are working on, meaning putting some effort into, right? And we may see some result, right? Now remember, the 9 is the number of attainment, and especially in La Baraja Española, right? It is the last card before we get to the face cards or the court cards, right? So it could just be a matter of attaining something, but it's going to maybe take some work, some effort, or the achievement might come with some time or in some sense of distance, like down the road, down the line, that kind of thing, right? So those are some of the ways that I would look at these cards. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick these cards up, and then we're going to go ahead and do one of my readings where I kind of create a scenario off the top of my head and we read into that. Alright, so I am back. I have the deck in hand. I'm going to set it down because now we're going to shuffle the cards. And I figured I would do a line of 5, which is one of my favorite types of readings to do. at this point in my card reading journey or in my practice, I work with less cards because I believe that less is more. So I usually do either 3 cards, 5 cards, or boxes of 9s, depending on the system, that kind of thing. But I tend to go with less is more. Okay, so I'm going to do a line of 5. So let's think of a scenario or a situation. I have an idea. So whenever somebody always asks me about a system or, working with cards, I usually like to frame a question around them. So let's make this question about Lisa, the person who requested the video. So if Lisa is kind of contemplating whether La Baraja Española is for her, she's interested in that. So let's ask the cards, what more does Lisa need to know about possibly picking up and either studying or working with La Baraja Española as a system of cartomancy or divination, whatever word she wants to use, or even fortune telling, right? Okay. And my head is tingling, which is a good sign that on some level, spirit likes to question. So I'm going to go with that. All right, so I'm shuffling with the question in mind. What I'm doing is I'm focusing on the question as I shuffle. So I'm asking again, what does Lisa need to know about either picking up or studying and working with La Baraja Española? Alright, so I'm feeling that's good. I'm going to go ahead and cut the cards. And I always cut away from you when I am not the subject of the reading. Okay, and so since this is a line of 5, I'm going to go ahead and fan the cards out. And then I'm just simply going to pick 5 cards from the fan that are getting my attention. Alright, so I have the 5 cards selected right here. I'm going to go ahead and pick the remainder of the deck up. I'm going to put that to one side because we will not need those cards. Okay, so now I'm going to take the cards and line them up in the order that they were selected. So on the far right here we have the last 2 cards, middle card, and on the left we have the first 2 cards. Okay, so now remember the question is, what does Lisa need to know about either picking up or working with La Baraja Española in terms of her card reading practice? Okay, so now I'm going to give these cards positional meanings, right? Whereas with Lenormand or Kipper or some other cartomancy or fortune telling system, you would just read the cards in a line depending on the system. But these days when I work with a line of 5, I give the cards positional meanings. So first card is going to be what I call the origin card. Why are we asking the question, right? The card usually will point at either something we need to know about the situation or show us why we're asking the question. Second card is about expectation. So this would be what could Lisa possibly expect from, or what are her expectations in terms of, picking up the cards if she's interested in that. And that would be interesting to see based on the fact that she did request the video, yeah? So then this card would be like the central issue or some type of influence that Lisa or myself as a reader is not aware of, right? Then the fourth is guidance or advice. This would be interesting to see what, because I said, what does Lisa need to know or do? So then this could give us insight into that aspect of the question. And then the last card is the outcome, the most likely outcome, meaning like if Lisa was to, be on this path, this would be how it will most likely turn out. Okay, so now let's take a look at the card, starting with the origin. Here we have the Knight of Cups. Okay, so now my first thing is that for me, the Knight of Cups is known as the Lover card, and it's very interesting. If we look with direction, even though the horse is going this way, the Knight himself is looking at this card, so it's highlighting this card. So there's something about, I'm feeling like the card is suggesting, like we're asking the question because Lisa is contemplating her direction or progress with the cards, right? If she is contemplating moving forward with this, right? she may be asking, like, what does this system have to offer for me, right? This would be the knight offering the cup, right? And what the way I'm reading is I'm combining the way that I read Tarot de Marseille or historical tarots with the way that I read playing cards, okay? So, but there is this interesting thing about, like, not necessarily walking away from whatever this card is, right? Because the horse, like I said, is moving this way, but the knight is looking at this card, right? So I would go with the idea here is that this card basically saying she's in this place about maybe not being sure about whether or not she wants to move forward with this, right? Or she's asking, will she love it? Because I tend to think of the Knight of Cups as the lover card. So she's maybe contemplating, like, will she love the La Baraja Española, right? And she won't know until maybe she has a better view of the cards, right? That would be the pun on me doing the walkthrough in the video in terms of the previous segment. Okay, so there's that. So now the expectation. Ooh, okay, so here we have the Nine of Cups. For me, the Nine of Cups is the wish card, right? So this is about her expectation about getting her wishes fulfilled or feeling a greater sense of emotional satisfaction, right? So that would be, because the 9 is about attainment and then the Cups is about feelings and emotions. That's how I would read that. And the pattern makes me think of 3x3 in terms of, like, patterns of cards. So maybe Lisa could either build on, I don't know where she's at with her cartomancy practice, but maybe there is wanting to build on that, and possibly by doing either what we call a box of 9 or a square of 9, yeah? But for me, my first impulse is to go with the idea about, like, attainment of wishes being fulfilled or some sort of sense of emotional satisfaction. Okay. Middle card. Do you notice this? Now, the first thing I will say is that I notice that all the cards so far are from the Suit of Cups. So there's a great deal of emotional energy here, right? And so for me, the Ace of Cups, which was in the previous layout, right, my line of cards for the day, same thing. So I would say here that two things are coming to me. Number one, feeling a sense of, like, feeling at home with the cards, right? So that implies feeling comfortable with the cards, right? That there may be something of even a spiritual nature or influence for the cards. Like, the cards will either resonate or speak to her on that level, right? This would be the beginning or start of, a romance, love affair, that kind of thing. And being open and receptive to, right? Cups are about being open and receptive, right? Because they are vessels. Right, so there's something about that, but I like this. So there's something about starting off with it with a great deal of emotion, right? Because of all three cards. Okay, so now let's kind of take a look at the other side now that we looked at those and see. Now this is in the position of guidance. So what is the possible guidance being offered? Okay, so here we have the Two of Swords. So now for me, the Two of Swords. Now we're moving from the feelings and to possibly have something having to do with the mind. Swords for me represent the mind, but they can also represent problems, difficulties, challenges. The first thing that I see here is about, the possibility of conflicting sources of material or resources, or because I see this as conflicting ideas, right? Because they're pointing in different directions. So it could just be a matter of, how can Lisa, maybe if she's looking at other forms of cartomancy or maybe some reference material, how can she bring that into her work with La Baraja Española in a way that it does not cause any conflict, right? It could also be that this card is inviting her not to put any pressure on herself to form a bond or relationship with the cards quickly. It could just be something that evolves over time and takes some effort, right? Last card here, and then we move back into the Cups. Now this is nice. The Two of Cups represents forming a bond or forming a connection. This card for me is about expectations. So in the end, expecting a bond to be formed, I think it's just a matter of working through this. All these cards are positive with the exception of maybe the Two of Swords for me anyway, in terms of the potential conflict. And it could just be a matter of conflicting ideas, theories, concepts, maybe external references, other people's thinking, right? The two is a number of partnership, right? And could represent the other, meaning like she's looking into what other people have to say. And it could just be a matter of her returning to her own sense of thinking, her own sense of feeling, her what does her gut tell her about this kind of thing. But if she was to choose to work with it, maybe remember that not all sources will agree on the same thing, and you just kind of have to take what works for you. Yeah, it reminds me of when I just started with working with playing cards, generally speaking, and I've said this many times in other videos, is that one of the things I found is that not everybody was in agreement on what the cards meant. Right? I could pick up 5 different books on cartomancy, and let's use the Two of Swords as a card of meaning, and then all 5 of those books would say that the Two of Swords meant something different. Each one would have a different meaning for the Two of Swords. And then it wasn't until I found Dr. Leo Lewis Martello's book and Regina Russell's book when I found agreement, right? So it could just be a matter of working through that as a thing, knowing that that's probably going to happen, and just coming to what the cards mean to you based on what you think and what you feel, and maybe what you know to be true based on prior or past experience. Yeah, right. With him looking back at this card could be like, okay, even though I'm moving forward, I'm relying on what I've known in the past, right? So that is how I would read that. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Lisa, if you are tuning in and watching, I hope you found this helpful. And please circle back at some point, Lisa, and let me know either A, whether or not you picked up the pack, or B, whether you decided to work with it and what your journey is like, right? The first card, what your journey is like. I would love to know. This is Jameson Mitchell signing off. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I look forward to spending the same time with you in the same place and space in our next video together. So until then, take care and have a great day.